Hello, good evening. Welcome to the regular trustee meeting for Beaver Creek Township. It is Monday, January 8th, 2024. It is 5 o'clock p.m. Would everybody stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, we have an agenda. Are there any changes or corrections this evening?
Yes, Board, just one minor addition. As you saw with your email, the payroll numbers on the agenda were omitted. They are properly inputted on your screen here, so just amend the agenda to reflect the proper payroll amounts of $750,842.27 for the December 13th, 2023 payroll and $367,295.49 for the December 27th, 2023 payroll.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for the January 8th, 2024 meeting as amended.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
I make a motion to accept the general ledger report in the amount of $750,842.27 for the 12/13/2023 payroll and $367,295.49 for the 12/27/2023 payroll as presented.
Second.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to accept the payment listing reports in the amount of $891,918.34 for warrants through January 4th, 2024.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes. We have minutes for the December 11th and regular trustee meeting and the December 11th special trustee meeting. Are there any changes or corrections?
No.
Aye. None.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the December 11th, 2023 special trustee meeting and the December 11th, 2023 regular trustee meeting as presented.
Second.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean? Or excuse me, Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes. Thank you. All right. We provide citizens a portion of our meeting to come up and to the podium and tell us anything you'd like for us to hear. You have 3 minutes if there's anyone in the audience that wants to come and speak. Come on up. State your name and your address, please.
My name's Edmund Keeler. I live over in Claiborne Green, 1647 Stonebury Court. I want to talk about the new proposal for storage units over off of Dayton Xenia and New Germany Trayvine. What? Trayvine, I'm sorry, Trayvine. First, I want to talk about the quality of life. Like that's going to cause a lot of traffic and impacts on an already very dangerous intersection. I feel like that's really going to impact the property values in that area. Like there's a lot of nice homes there. And personally, I just bought a home there a couple years ago at one of the highest points in the market, and I feel like that's just going to bring my home values down. And there are a lot of other citizens here from the area that also will express their concerns about that.
And sir, I don't mean to interrupt. There will be a public hearing on this case at 6 p.m. You're more than welcome to continue with your remarks, but just want to make sure you if you want to continue or if you want to wait to that portion of the meeting to be more germane, but it's completely up to your choice. This is public comment.
No, I'll just wait. I don't want to waste anybody's time. So, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on. There is no old business, so we'll move on to new business. I'll turn it over to Mr. Rushing.
Thank you, Board. It's that time of the year. It's our first meeting, and we have our annual reorganization of the Board of Township Trustees. So we have a litany of different items to go through, so bear with us for those that are in the public as we move through these. A lot of these are procedural, from selecting the chair and vice chair to appointing different members to certain committees and boards and commissions. So I prepped all the sample motions here. Those that are blank, obviously, all of these are at discretion of the board, but some of them are notated with names of trustees or other staff members as they currently serve in those capacities, and it's very vital that we continue that continuity, especially in regards to different boards and commissions where trustees and others serve in officer positions. So that's why those names are listed as you see those. But feel free, obviously, this is the board's reorganization, so it's under your purview. So as you see it there, all the motions are listed, so you can move forward those and appoint at your leisure.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion, 202-40108 Admin E to nominate Mr. Tom Kretz as Chair of the Board of Trustees for 2024.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes. Actually, I'll recuse myself. Thanks.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Next is Vice Chair of the Board.
I'll make a motion 202-40108-admin-F to nominate Ms. Wallace as Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees for 2024.
Second.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Abstain.
I make a motion to appoint Ms. Wallace to the MVRPC representative for 2024.
Second.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Abstain.
I'll make a motion 2024-0108-admin-I to appoint Mr. Randy Grogan.
I'm sorry, next motion will be to appoint the alternate for MVRPC, Admin H.
That's fine.
Doesn't matter.
I'll do it.
Okay. I'll make a motion, well, go ahead. Ms. Wallace, you want to do that one?
I'll make a motion 202-40108-admin-H to appoint Mrs. Dean as MVRPC alternate for 2024.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Abstain.
And I'll appoint him a second time, hopefully. 2024-0108-admin-I move to appoint Mr. Randy Grogan as the TAC representative for 2024.
Second.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
I make a motion 202-40108-admin-J to appoint Mr. John Schroeder as a TAC alternative for 2024.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
I make a motion 202-40108-admin-K to appoint Tom Kretz as the RPCC representative for 2024.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Abstain.
Who is?
I'll make a motion for 202-40108-admin-L to appoint Mrs. Dean as RPCC alternate for 2024.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Abstain.
I'll make a motion to appoint, I'll make a motion 2024-0108-admin-M as in Mary. I move to appoint Ms. Dean as Health Department District Advisory Council representative for 2024.
Second.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Abstain.
This next one, who did this last year?
I
Who
think
was a
that,
staff member?
yeah.
I can fill that if
That's
need
what I
be.
thought, so.
I'll make a motion 202-40108-admin-N to appoint Mr. Ryan Rushing as Health Department District Advisory Council representative alternate for 2024.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
I'll make a motion 2024-0108-admin-O to appoint Mr. Ryan Rushing as the township representative to the school superintendent and city manager meetings for 2024.
Second.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
I make a motion 202-40108-admin-P to appoint Alex Zaharieff as Wright Patterson Air Force Base Restoration Advisory Board Representative for 2024.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Make a motion 2024-0108-admin-Q to approve the membership to the Miami Valley Military Affairs Association for 2024 for the 4 elected officials and the township administrator.
Second.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
I make a motion for 202-40108-admin-R to approve the membership of the Coalition of Large Ohio Urban Townships, CLOUT, for 2024 and appoint Ryan Rushing as the township representative.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve membership to the Dayton Development Coalition for 2024 and authorize all 4 elected officials and township administrator to attend the annual Washington, D.C. fly-in.
Second.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve the credit card authorized user list for 2024 as presented.
Second.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Keep going. I make a motion 202-40108-admin-U to move to accept the annual report on all reward received based on the use of the credit card accounts for fiscal year 2024 as presented.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
I'll make a motion 2024-0108-admin-V as in Victor to approve the credit card account limits for fiscal year 2024 as presented.
Second.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
I make a motion 202-40108-admin-W to appoint Ryan Rushing as a township representative to the Tax Incentive Review Council, TIRC, meetings for 2024.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Make a motion 2024-0108-admin-X to appoint Mr. Randy Grogan as the alternate to the Tax Incentive Review Council meetings for 2024.
Second.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Make a motion 202-40108-admin-Y to approve the authorized employee staffing list for 2024 as presented.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Make a motion 2024-0108-admin-Z as in zebra. I move to approve the public record request fee schedule for 2024 as presented.
Second.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes. Woo. Got all the way through the alphabet.
Thank you, board. Now that we are done with the fun stuff, we'll move on to the boring stuff. First is our departmental reports. First, we have the Greene County Sheriff's Office, and Sergeant Kessel is here to answer any questions or bring any points of awareness to you.
Good afternoon, Board.
Good afternoon.
No, sir.
Evening, I should say. It's been a long day. I just want to bring to your attention, I do have a meeting scheduled with Captain Ing next month to schedule the first quarterly blitz. We discussed that in the past about having quarterly blitzes, drug blitz on the highway. So that's next month.
Okay.
Do you have any questions concerning the reports?
I know in the past, we funded specific interdiction campaigns in that region. So, and what we've always told them in the past was if they reached a point where they needed to do a concentrated effort that required special funding, not to hesitate to come. Just from a importance, from a resident, but also business owners of that corridor, but then also visitors that pass by, and obviously the soccer fields. So,
Very good.
okay, so just keep us posted. Thank you. Anything else? Event-wise, or anything coming up that we need to be aware of?
No, not at this time.
Is Hamvention gonna be at the fairgrounds again
That's my understanding.
this year? Okay, I didn't know if their lease was up, so, okay.
I'll make sure that I forward the routing to you as well as the dates when that planning starts.
And
Today-
I know, I'm sorry, ACE Task Force, I know was, had a prevalent, or a presence, I should say, or a monitoring presence on that in the past as far as human trafficking and other issues that were going on.
Yeah, the sheriff also gets really involved with the resources with, also with the SWAT team. They have members out there as well. So just, yeah, so,
Great, thank you.
you're welcome.
Sorry, Ms. Walls.
That's all right. Earlier today, US 35 was shut down east. How far did it go? Do you know? Did it come to Greene County? I know it was shut down in Montgomery County.
Montgomery County, no, nothing reported in Greene County. It's
Okay, I just was wondering.
Yeah,
I was out at the VA and we couldn't get on it at all.
terrible incident.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Ms. Walls. Excuse me, missed one. Stuck together.
Thank you, Board. Move on to our Human Resources Department. Happy to report that our new HR manager, Ms. Jill Sink, has joined us. She started her first day last week, Tuesday, January 2nd. So Ms. Sink is here and jumping right in and meeting with individuals and getting involved in a lot of the topics of HR. So I do want to welcome Ms. Sink to the township.
Thank you. Good evening. I'll give you a quick rundown. It's very easy for December. I wasn't here, but Mr. Rushing, Assistant Chief Merks, and Mrs. Molden all were pitching in to take care of HR duties as they have been since, I believe, September. There are 4 conditional offers that have been extended for vacant firefighter positions. They have all accepted and are completing their pre-employment screening. The interesting number was we had 45 folks choose the HSA plan this year instead of, the number exceeded, I think, what was expected is what I'm told.
In
And,
addition to or in place of?
In place of,
In place of, yes. So 39 chose the FSA that had
PPO.
previously chosen it, and 45 chose the HSA. Yes, I'm sorry, the PPO. And yes, I've been making my rounds, trying to get to know people and get the lay of the land. And I'm drinking from a fire hose right now, but hopefully that won't last forever.
You're in the right place to do that.
Right?
We've got
Right?
plenty.
I think Chief Van the Boss gave me that little term today, and it's very fitting. So, and then you'll see we had 5 more workers' comp claims this year that were allowed over last year. And I'm getting the lay of that land fairly quickly.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, you are.
well, we welcome you. We're glad to have you here. I know that our staff is glad to have an HR person here instead of them doing the multiple responsibilities. So welcome you, and hopefully you'll fit in really well with us.
thank you. I hope to as well. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you, Board. Now we have a Community Development and Risk Department, Mr. Grogan.
She actually got to go on her first fire call meeting too, right?
I did.
Yeah, she was riding along. We had a stretcher fire call. Didn't turn out to be anything. But good evening.
Evening.
Just a few quick little things. Again, we do have the case 838 or 839 coming up at 6 o'clock. Case 837 is going to be held the next trustees meeting on January 22nd at 6 p.m. And a couple other things on the report, specifically actually showing a couple of the purchases we had this year. But overall, as a comparison to kind of the last 3 years of the chart, we came in pretty close to the average single-family housing starts of the last 3 years. The average was 78, and we came in at 82 this year, so it was about average. And then further in the report, just to make a little note that on the prevention side, or on the community risk side, staff did a great job, even with Mr. Henley being out for a short time with medical issues. We had about 527 hours of fire protection time, or plan review time that we took with fire protections, and we averaged about 6 days of turnaround time for fire protection plans that we received from the county to get back to the county, and our objective was 10 days, and so luckily we were well within that. So, but if you have any questions about the report, let me know. If not, we'll see you at 6 o'clock.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, board. Moving on to IT. Packets in front of you. Are there any questions?
I had none.
I had none.
I do want to extend my appreciation to Paragon. As the board know, last year we had a nice meeting with them, talking about current topics and safety and security. So they do good work for us to ensure that our infrastructure is safe. Thank you, board. We will now move on to our finance department. Our finance director, Ms. Molden, is here to answer any questions.
Busy time of year.
From a audit calendar, where are we at cycle-wise? Are we off year, on year, as far as for 2024? So next year? Yep, okay.
Yes.
2025 would be, and that would be for 23 and 24?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to add to that, board, we did receive notice that the desk review for our audit is complete. And I want to thank staff, Mr. Rushing, the finance department. It was a clean audit.
That's great.
So it will be posted, and as soon as it gets posted, then we'll be doing an exit interview with the Board of Township Trustees to review it. But it's a clean audit, so I don't think it'll be a very long meeting.
When will the cemetery process be all finished? I saw that you
What are you
haven't-
talking about
you
with the
had-
cemetery process? The
Well, you had
software?
there was training that you guys did and things are,
That's the software.
On the software?
We have our second training tomorrow,
okay.
2:00.
And then you,
Then we have like 3 more trainings after that.
Oh,
and
really?
then we should be live. Yes.
I'd like to see, when it's all done, I'd like to be able to see the software and
Yeah,
see how it
absolutely.
I like
works.
the mapping, because the mapping shows every grave, whether it's sold, whether it's filled, whether someone's buried there, or whether it's empty. And then I think that can help the guys at roads, help them explain the areas that we have issues and why we don't want to sell those lots.
Okay, that'd be great.
So,
Yeah, we can do a tutorial at a future meeting and put it on
Okay.
the screen and show you some of the interactive features. That'd be nice.
Yeah, once all the training is done, yeah.
definitely.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, board. Now move on to our public service department. Mr. Tim Parks is here to answer any questions. Or Mr. Schroeder, tag team.
Good evening.
I'm happy to answer any questions. I will say Saturday was our first outing for snow. It went very well.
Good.
We're kind of transitioning as John being the primary and me being the backup. And
Doesn't that
things
feel
ranged-
good?
Huh? All I got was a text in the morning saying we're out. But I'm good with that.
I know that.
So, other than that, we're just doing our usual day-to-day tree trimming and station projects.
Mr. Rushing had talked about maybe seeing the fire engines. They're not ready
We
yet?
haven't seen them yet. I'm not
Oh,
sure
okay.
when they're supposed to be.
Oh, okay.
I think they're in state, but they're
I think
not
there's
here.
one right above us.
Just a minute.
Oh, okay.
Above us. On the, as far as the snow, so the arrangement that we have to help the city of Beaver Creek side on Hunter's Ridge when we're at Hunter's Point, so is that an automatic where we go over,
No.
or is that only on request?
Only on request.
Okay, So I'm presuming in this situation, did they request, I'm just curious at what point, if there's a certain number of inches, a certain number of threshold, what that is.
I am not real sure because they have never, I mean, the agreement's been in place for 10 or so years.
A 6-inch snow, they probably will do it,
Yeah,
but yeah, okay,
Yeah, they would have to get buried pretty deep.
okay. Okay. And then that agreement, was that, is that neighborhood specific or is that anywhere needed in the city?
No, there are different
Zones,
sections that they've kind of said, these are where you're gonna be going, and we
Yeah.
have the maps for them and all that. But, once again, that was in play last year, and we haven't heard anything from them this year, so,
And were you called last year at all?
no, we were not.
and then any update on the library project that you
We're
can
waiting
share?
on design,
Okay,
which hopefully, I'm hoping by the end of this month, so we can get this thing rolling.
okay. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, board. We now move on to our fire department. Chief Vandenboss is here to present, I think, one surplus resolution and his monthly report.
Yes, board, we'd like to get rid of some old stuff, so we have a resolution prepared for you. I'd like to thank Nicole for putting that together, and we have it ready to be passed as presented.
Okay. I'll make a motion, resolution number 202-40108-Fire-A for certain township equipment to be surplus and to be disposed of as presented.
second,
Ms. Wallace,
Yes.
Mr. Kretz,
yes,
Mrs. Dean.
Yes.
Thank you, board. Have our normal activity report. As part of that, there are two individuals that we would like to recognize tonight. First is firefighter Nick Hoagland. Nick has just stepped down after 10 years of as our infectious control program manager. He guided us through some relatively benign pandemics like the Ebola pandemic, which luckily turned out to be nothing, and then managed to stick around long enough to deal with COVID for 3+ years. So he is the one that kept us apprised of the changing CDC guidelines, the current statuses of county level protection requirements and hospital protection requirements, kept us in stock of gloves and masks and recycling those as appropriate. So he was very busy over that time. So we want to recognize the work that he did. He has agreed to assist in the transition to firefighter Norris, so we'll be taking over that responsibility for him in the future. So we'd like to recognize that good work. Also, Lieutenant Dean is our technical rescue guru. We have a couple of them, but he's probably at the top of that heap. He just seems to thrive on that, and he is in the process now that crews have been transitioned and moved around for the beginning of the year and all the balancing that we needed to do. He is in the process of creating a training program and getting not only the Station 61 crews who have the primary responsibility for technical rescue trained to the appropriate levels, but he's going to work on making sure that the entire department has at least enough awareness level that they can help with the effectiveness and efficiency of responses. So they may not be doing all the hands-on, but they'll certainly be capable of doing all the support work necessary for successful technical rescue. And we have a fair bit of those. Some of the more arcane ones we don't deal with a lot, but obviously we have a large number of extrications and that type of incident. We have our fair share of vehicles into buildings. Unfortunately, that seems to be the trend these days. And then the rope skills that they use, we don't do a lot of high-angle rope rescue, but the rope skills that they develop doing that are frequently used in their other disciplines. It's a good skill set for all the disciplines. And then obviously we usually have at least a couple water rescues a year, and that falls under there. So he's a very busy individual in that regard. So we want to recognize the work that he's doing in getting the new folks trained up. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you have on those topics, and then I can talk about engines after that.
No questions.
So I'm not actually going to talk about engines. I'm going to turn that over to Chief Heister in just a second, but I did want to recognize Chief Heister and his committee. So I'll let him tell you the membership of his committee, but he was in charge of wrangling this project from concept to delivery, and we have achieved delivery to the state of Ohio.
That crew started with a ground-up specification, so they did not begin with any assumptions. They did not begin with a model. They decided from the very beginning what they needed from wheels, from suspension, transmission, engine. Alan was a huge part of that, so maintenance has been involved with it as well as part of that committee, as well as a number of features that he's going to be able to tell you about and show you on these new engines that makes them superior to the last generation.
Great.
So with that, I'm going to let Chief Easter tell you a little bit about the engines, and just want to recognize him and his crew for the good work.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board. We did complete our final inspection in Wisconsin in mid-December. Those were then, the items that were found during that inspection were addressed, and then the engines took the drive from Wisconsin to Springboro on December 27th. We were actually there to look over those and verify that all the items that were brought up were repaired or adjusted. Those have been done, and now they are undergoing their outfitting. So our team has been going down to the Atlantic facility in Springboro and working alongside their staff. So their staff has the items that you've approved for them to work on, the turtle tile in the cabinets and the electrical installation. Our folks have been mounting tools and been able to work together with that team while they're down there. I do have one of the engines up in the bay. If you would like to take a look at that this evening, you're more than welcome to. At every point in time works for you for that, either after the meeting or if you have a recess in between. The committee is comprised, actually, we expanded a little bit for the final inspection so that we could complete that in 1 week instead of 2. So we have 4 firefighters currently on the committee, 2 lieutenants, 1 captain, and myself. We started that committee. We've had a couple of folks that have left us, left the organization during that time. So we've had to replace those, but that committee has been cross-section of the organization the entire time. So we are almost there. We will then actually see all 4 engines come to the township on Monday, January 15th. So as soon as I know that time, I'll definitely let you know that. But the current plan is to then take the factory training courses on the week of the 15th across all of our staff. And then we'll be doing our driver's training program and checkoffs for the remainder of January. And we would like to dedicate these apparatus to the department on February the 3rd, which is a Saturday. So I'd like to extend an invitation to you for that. That dedication will take place here at Fire Station 61. We'll have a breakfast. We'll actually bring back the old timers breakfast so that a lot of our retired folks can see that as well, but that will be open to the public as well. So we'll be publicizing that. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or save those until you have the chance to take a look at one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very exciting.
Thank you, Board. That's all I have this evening.
Okay. Legal advisor, Ms. Frick.
Nothing today.
Thank you. Mr. Zaharia, fiscal officer.
Thank you, Board. As part of the reorg we do every year, we ask the county auditor to advance us our taxes, which means once they are paid through the county treasurer's office, they go directly to Beaver Creek Township instead of being dispersed later in the year. So as soon as we receive tax settlements, they are forwarded to Beaver Creek Township. There's a motion in your packet. It can be passed as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2024-0108-FIN-A, a resolution to request tax advancements from Greene County Auditor for calendar year 2024 as presented.
Second.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Okay, meetings, MVRPC,
No meeting.
TAC. Regional planning,
No meeting.
health department was just this past Thursday. There was nothing for Beaver Creek Township. School superintendent, city manager,
No meeting, be at the end of this month.
awesome. Ray Patterson, Air Force Base Restoration, Greene County Wastewater.
No meeting.
Township Association,
No meeting.
investment oversight.
Nothing other than a continuation of previous comments, just to monitor and invest as long as we can. I think we have the 5-year horizon. As far as any carryover funds, bonds, the bond market is still at peak and anticipated to be so for another 6 to 9 months as it starts to trail off as interest rates level off. So whatever any bonds we have, any funds we have maturing, just to make sure that we're investing those in as long a run as we can.
You know, we are gonna be, I am gonna be requesting an investment oversight committee, of the committee, and to take a look at where we're at. We do have, after the budget meeting, we have some funding numbers, for long-term projections, so, we are getting some requests from our investor about, having long-term investments in place with the current, rates that are in place.
Did Mr. Henry respond, do we know, or not? If not, we can try to reach out to him.
Yeah, I'll reach out to him.
Again, okay. If not, Mr. Henry was our member at large from the community, but he also had a wealth management and financial planning background. So if we cannot reach him, I believe he still lives in the area and still lives in. If you can't reach out, if you can't find him or can't connect with him, let me know. We can try a couple different avenues.
Yeah, just to remind the board, the committee is made up of the fiscal officer, a member of the Board of Township Trustees, as Mr. Kretz just said, a member of the community at large, Mr. Rushing, and our finance director, Terry Molden.
Great.
All right, and the 911 Advisory Committee?
We met, we had our first meeting, and Mr. Chief Heister was unanimously appointed to provide steering. You want to step up and just say a few comments if you can?
Sure. So, yes, it was recommended to the Board of County Commissioners for me to take on the 911 coordinator role for Greene County. They then passed that resolution the next day. So that information went off to the state, and now I'm in the process of getting my feet under me and determining where we are with several of the issues, including the Next Gen 911 plan that needs to be submitted to the state of Ohio in April, I believe. So it doesn't appear that there is a current plan in place, so we'll be drafting that from the ground up at this point. But the goal is to have a draft of that plan ready for the January 31st meeting, which would be the next board's meeting for that.
So you get done with one project and you start another one.
I'm not done with the other one yet. We took delivery of 4 apparatus out of the 6. Yeah, so we're definitely keep moving forward, but that's why we have a lot of folks to help divide these things up.
There was, it was really no question from the committee's standpoint. The makeup of that committee was resolute, essentially, that Mr. Chief Heister's background and accreditations and qualifications and work experience and everything else was the perfect solution to steer the county. And obviously having Beaver Creek Township having a seat at that table in one of the most important positions obviously is beneficial to all of Beaver Creek, not just the unincorporated portion. So thank you.
Thanks.
For not saying no.
I'll keep that out in minutes.
Thank you, Board. I would recommend, printed on the agenda, we have the option to go in executive session before or after our zoning case hearing. So at the pleasure of the board, I would recommend we meet after and then we recess until 6 p.m. and to view the new fire engine.
Mr. Rushing, one other thing on that 911 advisory
Yes, I
committee. So
apologize.
the committee did discuss some type of compensation to Beaver Creek Township for Chief Heister's time. And so that does the details of that to be worked out. But everyone was in agreement that it's not a donation of time. There should be some compensation for time.
Absolutely.
So Brandon Huddleston should be reaching out to you, and if he hasn't already, to start working through those details. So
Thank you. So if it's at the board's pleasure, we can recess till 6 p.m.
Sounds great.
that's fine.
We're moved to the public hearing for the Board of Township Trustees. This is zoning case number 838 and 839. The Beaver Creek Township Board of Township Trustees will hold 2 public hearings in the community room on the lower level of the Fire Station 61, located at 2195 Dayton Xenia Road, Beaver Creek, Ohio, 45434, on Monday, January 8th, 2024, scheduled to begin at 6:00 p.m. The purpose of the hearings is so the board may review and act on 2 requested actions. Case number 838, Luke Weston, property owners requesting a rezoning at 1671 Dayton Xenia Road, currently zoned O1 office to R1 AA single family residential. And case number 839, K4 Properties LLC, with the approval of the property owners Kerwin Pink LLC and Kerwin Red LLC, are requesting approval of a specific site plan application for an upscale self-storage facility. The proposed specific site plan is to be located within the subdivision plat Bluegrass Crossing as Stonehill Village. The Board of Trustees will approve with conditions or deny the proposed zoning map amendment and site plan. The Beaver Creek Township Board of Township Trustees decisions will be final. Okay, and now we will hear the explanation of
Staff
the
report.
staff reports, please.
Hi, and nice to be back. Nice to see you all again.
Good to see you.
Thank you and everybody else for the warm welcome back. I will say, however, that one of the things I learned in retirement was how much I love retirement. So let's get me replaced again quickly. Thank you. The first case, 838, was an application by Luke Weston. I don't think Luke is here tonight, no. Luke appeared before the zoning commission and presented his case. This one is actually fairly simple, but it does bear going back for a little bit of history. It appears that sometime in the mid-'80s, concurrent with the development of the industrial park across the street, that the township saw fit to rezone properties on the south side of Dayton Senior Road, but not entire properties, just properties to about a 200-foot depth from Dayton Senior Road into the properties, to rezone those properties to an office, O1 office designation, which would have allowed retail development, office development, such as doctor's offices and financial institutions and things like that. That rezoning was done in anticipation of development pressure that never materialized along that strip of road. But those properties remain, many of them remain zoned partly one thing and partly office one. Some of them have an industrial zoning, some of them have residential zoning, and so on and so forth. When it comes, this property that we're considering tonight was the easternmost property zoned to the O1 designation. And it, the only use that's ever been in place on the property, however, has been residential. So the new owner of the property, Luke Weston, and in conversation with his new neighbors on either side, realized neighbors on both sides are zoned R1AA, and there are some irregularities in the survey for the property as it's currently filed with the recorder, with the county recorder. In fact, the documents that we unearthed that I think you have in your packet indicate that the recorder never filed one of the surveys because they found the file to be unrecordable, meaning the survey didn't close. When you start a survey, you go around in a circle and you have to end up back where you started. Well, they didn't. So picture, if you will, a property line where the transit was said to be turned a certain number of degrees in minutes and seconds, and it was off by a couple of minutes. Well, you got property lines that are this way and they should be this way. And that's the situation that we have here. Mr. Weston wants to correct that, and they've already hired a surveyor to do the survey work to file the corrected survey. However, if you file the survey while his property is zone 01, then you've got a slice of 01, a slice of R1A, a slice of 01, and they're going to be going to different people. Some property is going to change hands here, 400 square feet here, 400. Small slices of property may change hands, but if we don't rezone his property first, then what we're going to end up with is a patchwork of differently zoned properties that will require 3 or 4 separate rezoning actions rather than this one. And so that's kind of a long explanation for what's going on here, but the owner would like to correct that and then get on with the filing of the new survey so that they can have a legally binding survey on file with the recorder's office, which they currently don't have. So that's the reason for this zoning. It also doesn't make sense from a practical standpoint, meaning this is what's on the ground. This is how the property's been used. It's currently in use. There are no plans for any change in that use, and the neighbors on either side are zoned that way. Let's fix this. And that's what's going on with this case. I'll answer any questions you might have before you open the public hearing, and then we can go from there.
Thank you.
Okay?
And I'm sorry, you said that the applicant is not here?
I don't see him in the room tonight. He did appear before the zoning commission and didn't have any comments to add to mine, so he chose not to come tonight. So,
Okay.
probably not a big deal. I don't think there are any complex arguments to be made one way or the other in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and open the public portion since there will be no applicant comments. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that wants to speak on this case? No? Okay, then we'll close the public portion and have discussion amongst the board.
Discussion.
I think, based on Mr. Amrine's recommendation, this appears to be more housekeeping and cleanup and fixing the problem at the county as far as the unrecordable survey, and then reclassifying it essentially to its present use is the best way to say it.
Right. It's about problems uncovered by a new owner when he took possession of the property.
Right. Which is not uncommon. It does happen. So more frequently than people realize. So most people do not read their deed. Most people when they buy a property don't read their deed. They don't read their survey or they may not be familiar with the terminology.
Board, do you have a sample resolution in front of you? It can be passed as presented.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I had none.
I have none.
I'll make a motion for resolution number 202-40108-ZC-A to approve zoning map amendment to 1671 Dayton Xenia Road, parcel ID B03000200 35001180 from 01 office to R1 AA residential zoning designation as presented.
Second.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Board, before this next case, I'm going to recuse myself.
Yeah, the record will reflect that Mr. Kretz has recused himself.
Here, I'll sign
Sign
it
this
first
one.
and then I'll sign it.
For those in the audience, just to let you know, this case will again follow the same procedures that we just followed. We'll hear from staff and then public comments, and then we'll have discussion.
Okay, case number 839 is a specific site plan application. Just for review, specific site plan is a approval process that is specified in our zoning resolution as part of the chain in getting to final approval leading to construction within property parcels zoned to a PUD, a planned unit development. To be at this stage, specific site plan approval, a number of other actions must have already taken place. And in this case, there was an extra step that was chosen by staff and agreed to by ownership in order to get township approval of the use of the property for this specific purpose. When the master plan for Stonehill Village was revised in January of 2016, after a process that took at least 6 months or so, as I remember, the commercial and higher density residential pieces of Stonehill Village were relocated from the center of Stonehill Village up in the vicinity of Ankeny Road down to the southern portion along Dayton Xenia on either side of Trapine Road. That was a reflection of 30 years of development activity in Stonehill Village that saw pressure for development primarily directed at residential single-family dwelling development up to that point. But we've known for a long time that once a certain density of population is achieved, commercial development is bound to follow, and higher pressure for higher density residential as well. And so those had been approved way back in the beginning of Stonehill Village in 1990. The very first approvals, the first applications are dated to 1988, the first approvals to 1990. So commercial and higher density residential were anticipated from the beginning. And in January of 2016, following a series of public hearings, they were relocated from the Ankeny Road area down to this area at the intersection of Trapine and Hilltop and Dayton Xenia. As represented in the enclosed documents, the applicant here tonight wishes to construct self-storage facilities designed to be high-end and to be modeled on the example of, quote, a Kentucky horse farm. Well, the idea of the Kentucky horse farm goes back to Irvin Nutter at the beginning of Stonehill Village. He Calumet Farms was sort of a dream in his mind. And so, but self-storage facilities, though commercial in nature, were seen as not exactly fitting the designation that the revised master plan, which, by the way, was approved legislatively, not just administratively. That's an important distinction here, that commercial and higher density residential were now allowed in this area was part of township legislation. And so a conditional use application was filed with the Board of Zoning Appeals to allow this use as a conditional use in this portion of Stonehill Village. That application was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Let's see if I can give you the exact date. We have it here. I don't know if I have it immediately at my fingertips, but the Board of Zoning Appeals did approve the conditional use application. So the idea of putting self-storage facilities as a type, that was done when? April of last year. Okay. April of last year was when it was approved, the conditional use permit. So the legislatively approved master plan for Stonehill Village, which calls for commercial development on this land, was approved in 2016. The conditional use permit was granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals in 2023. And so where we are now is looking at more detailed drawings about what exactly is going to be constructed. And that's what we're here for tonight, is to consider the specific site plan. We have images of the planned construction styles, designs. The applicant has submitted images of the look they're aiming for and has worked with numerous agencies having authority over various aspects of the site, such as drainage, roadway access, security, landscaping, fire protection, open space, lighting, utilities, location, and building materials. The Greene County Regional Planning and Coordinating Commission has granted approval for this site plan. The Zoning Commission reviewed the plans and approved them. The Zoning Commission's role here is to review the plans in some detail and make recommendations to you, the trustees, and they are recommending approval. Staff also recommends approval given the sensitive and prominent location of this proposal. It has been subjected to some of the most thorough and critical review I have ever seen in this role as planner and zoning administrator. Its implementation will invite similar scrutiny. The only condition that now makes sense to me as the township interim planner is that we acknowledge that many other agencies are still going to be involved in approving various aspects of this plan, from drainage and utility installation to open space, roadway access, and so on and so forth. A blanket condition that staff would recommend would be, quote, subject to the approval of any entity having authority over any aspect of the plan. And that would include county engineer, county planners, and so on and so forth, all of the things we've already mentioned. And that would cover all of the details that we will be concerned with, assuming that the trustees are comfortable with the actions of the BZA as well as their predecessors in approving the revised master plan for Stonehill Village. Part of the reason for revising that plan was that the previous location of the planned commercial and higher density residential areas relied on the school being located up there. And back in back in the year before the schools were built, Coy and Trebine, the school district said this property that's been allotted to us isn't big enough for what we want to do, and we can't afford to build the roadway that'll be necessary for it. Can we think of something different? So the Nutter family entered into negotiations with the school board and ended up either donating or selling for a nominal amount of money the 50-acre site on which the schools now sit, and then removing that site, excising it from the master plan of Stonehill Village. That was the first major change made there. And then in 2015, as I reviewed the plans for Claiborne Green, I realized, oh my goodness, because of all these changes and because of the development that had happened to that date, we were bumping up against density limitations that were included in the original master plan of Stonehill Village and needed to be revised. And so the revision actually resulted in a lower total number of dwelling units being allowed for Stonehill, for the whole of Stonehill Village, as well as reconsidering and revising some of the numbers for individual segments of Stonehill Village to allow for example, commercial and higher density in the south and lower density or medium density construction up along Ankeny Road, should it ever be extended across Trebine. That may or may not still happen, I don't know. My point is that these changes had to happen legislatively because the original density limitations were put in place legislatively and could only be changed by further legislation. So all the legislation is done and the conditional use permit is done. I think to me as a planner who's come to this application lately, it doesn't make any sense to muddy the waters any further by not continuing to approve this as long as the condition that I articulated is met, that other agencies are satisfied that due diligence has in fact been exercised and all the access and drainage and other utility points have been managed well. I'm going to turn this over to the applicant, a representative of the applicant now, to show you some of the construction details and design details that his company, their company, I should say, represent, and then we'll open it for your questions. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tom Kretz, 1202 Stallion Run, Beaver Creek Township, 45385. I'm joined with my wife, Kim, tonight, so thank you for hearing our case. A little background on ourselves. So K4 Properties was actually the owner of American Pride Self-Storage at 580 Orchard Lane. We built that from the ground up. We actually purchased that same land from the same seller, different legal entity, but the same folks owned that property. This is over by the soccer fields directly across from the intersection of Orchard and Yellow Brick Road. So we built that. We bought that land in 2011. We started with about 3.25 acres. We built our first phase, 31,000 square feet. We went through similar process. Process was a little bit different at that time, but went through the township process, went through the BZA process, because there were some variances that were required. That site was zoned differently, so some of this piece of the process was not required, but we still had steps we had to go through at the county. So we built roughly 31,000 square feet in our first phase. Then we added about another 16,000 square feet. Then we actually purchased 2.5 acres adjoining our property to the east from the same seller. That one you had to essentially go down Valley Springs Road to see that piece of it, kind of behind the Tractor Supply. And so we ended up building a total of about 70,000 square feet in 3 phases. Over about a 3.5 year period. We constructed that. So we opened that in 2012, and then we actually sold that property in 2017. Tried to retire and couldn't do it. So to say all that is to say that we've done this before, and we kept every promise that we made to the township. There were some things asked of us that we thought were beyond the scope, but we agreed to them and we worked with them and we followed all the rules. We did everything we were asked to do. And the property was a huge success. So we had literally thousands of families across the street that essentially enjoyed that amenity. And it was, from a soccer field standpoint, it was a great location. Fast forward to the site that we're talking about today. And if we could actually pull the site plan up. Mr. Rushing. And if you can scroll up a bit. This one is fine. So Stonehill Village, as Mr. Amran articulated, the original vision of that was bluegrass country. It was Kentucky horse farms. That's where it came from, Calumet Farms. This piece of Stonehill Village is actually called Bluegrass Crossings. And so there's been a lot of residential development activity in the site in this area, just to give a high level overview. So if you have GIS, you can pop that on there and zoom out a little bit. And so what you have, there is the Claiborne Green development to the north. There's 38 acres essentially north of Overbrook Boulevard that is just south of Claiborne Green. And so that piece essentially will soon most likely be attaching itself to Claiborne Green. There'll be some connectivity there with streets. That is going to be 250 to 260 condominiums, depending on what they end up with. Directly across the street on the other side of Treybine, you have a commercial triangle, which is defined as Harlow Lane, Treybine, and Hilltop. There's about 8 acres there that will be developed as commercial. That is earmarked for more retail right now, just from a standpoint of what it'll fit. And then also the property owner who purchased that 8 acres also purchased about 52 other acres, which is that open area right there that you see running along Hilltop, just south of the hillside, and that'll be what's called Hillside Farms. That's going to be 240, we'll call them ranch style, age-targeted rental units. When you go on Overbrook Boulevard, like I said, you've got the condominium development that'll be just south of Claiborne Greens, and then you've got the wooded section that kind of creates a buffer, and then you've got a 99-bed nursing home that is going to be developed on that. I think it's roughly about 20-acre piece right there at the end of the cul-de-sac up next to the school. They've actually been working with Stonehill, from my understanding, to create essentially a trail and connectivity so that those that come down Amersham essentially can jump on a trail and could walk to school without going through the woods. So when we look at this site, and if we kind of zoom in, Mr. Rushing, and this is good. So if we look at, and if you maybe highlight that piece, yep, that's highlighted in aqua. And I don't know why that little sliver's up there from the county, but so that from a traffic standpoint, as you may or may not be aware, there's a roundabout that's already planned, approved, and funded for the intersection to replace the flashing lights. So that roundabout, to my understanding, is a 2-lane roundabout. Essentially go right at Dayton Xenia Hilltop and Treybine. And right away essentially has already been granted. If you zoom in, Mr. Rushing, you'll be able to see possibly there's that gray stripe essentially is a county drainage swale that runs along the frontage of the site that we're talking about today. From a traffic or congestion standpoint, Overbrook has been the section of land essentially on both the east and west side of Overbrook. I'm sorry, east and west side of Treybine between Overbrook and Dayton Xenia has had more traffic studies done on it than any other section of Treybine. To my knowledge, there's been 8 different traffic studies done on that site. Those traffic studies have all essentially determined that unless that triangle piece, referred to as the commercial triangle, if that were to develop into a gas station, the only essentially traffic controls at this intersection that would be required, understanding the density that's already approved for the condominiums, understanding the density that's approved for the nursing home, understanding the density that's already approved and construction has started across the street on those rental units. The only traffic controls would be acceleration, deceleration, and lanes and stop signs. And that's from, I think, 7 or 8 different traffic studies, including studies that have been completed by the county engineers. His name is Paul Goodhue. He's the traffic consultant essentially for the county. So that has been engineered, and some would say over-engineered, but it is what it is. So if we go back to the site plan drawing, and we go to the section that shows the green site, there you go. And we zoom in on that a little bit. So what you can see here is there's a number of parcels that are actually being conveyed, but the sections in green are the only sections that are actually buildable. And so when you look at this, everything south of Overbrook in totality is about 24 acres. And so what's buildable is about 15. The reason that portion is the only portion that's buildable is partially because of that county drainage swale that runs through what's referred to as Kerwin Gold, the parcel north of Overbrook, and runs down the frontage essentially of this site from essentially Overbrook to the corner of Dayton Xenia Treybine. There's also a large drainage swale that was essentially put in there, and that swale essentially is a collector for the land north of Overbrook, essentially, and it channels it there. There's a pipe that goes under the road to the river. There's another pipe, if you kind of look at that as a yoke and say there's a parcel in the middle that obviously is not colored green, and then to the left of that, there's another pipe that goes from that larger section under the road to the river as well. And so if we go down one slide, Mr. Rushing, or a couple slides, I'm sorry. Keep going to this site. So here, what you can see, the horizontal lines essentially reflect grading to be able to create buildable pads. So this is where you begin to see what's buildable, what's not buildable, and then you also start to see from a stormwater management and a detention what is possible there and what's required. So stormwater and topography are the site's #1 challenges. In fact, it's a project essentially that requires about 7 figures in the dirt before you actually can put a concrete pad on it. So it's a very challenging site. The county engineer has stipulated that no ingress or egress shall come into this site from Treybine in between Overbrook and the intersection of Dayton Xenia Treybine. She's also required, and it's stipulated, and it's on every survey now, that no ingress egress will come north into the site from Dayton Xenia. So, and that's for the entire 24-acre piece. So what it's done is it's from a development perspective, this was envisioned to be the villages or the village center, essentially, of Stonehill Village. So the concepts that were presented and approved long before I was around essentially envisioned this to be much like the Green. That's what they wanted. So they wanted a smaller version of the Green on this corner. So with retail, with restaurants, street retail, essentially residential over retail, office over retail, that's what they envisioned, a lifestyle center for this corner. Based on access, topography, stormwater, that's not, that may sound good, but it's not feasible. Specifically from a life safety standpoint, you wouldn't be able to put that many people into a site and not have ingress egress for emergencies. So, but those are county roads, they're controlled by the county engineer. So what we did, essentially we met with the Nutters, and if you can flip now to, there's a color rendering that you should have of Calumet Farms. So every storage facility ultimately has an office. Every storage facility has buildings and has doors that go up and down that you can see from the outside. And then most modern storage facilities have climate control buildings where you enter the building in order to get to your unit. So what we did is we took the concept of Stonehill Village and said, okay, this is the gateway to Stonehill. This is the gateway coming north on Treybine. How do you want this to look? And the answer was it needs to look like a Kentucky horse farm. That's what we envisioned. We envisioned grass, we envisioned plenty of it, we envisioned white fence, we envisioned white buildings, green roofs, throw some garnet on there for trim and color, and we don't want to see storage doors open when we drive down Treybine or up and down Dayton Xenia. So the Nutters specifically said we don't want any storage doors that open on the exterior of the buildings, essentially along Treybine or along Dayton Xenia. If you go to the next slide. So if you look at, these are pictures from Calumet, and Kim and I went there essentially, and we looked at it before we decided we want to do this, because this is not your typical storage facility. Most storage facilities in this part of the country do not have a 412 pitch roof. It's not required for snow load or wind load. It's much more expensive. You're creating attic space that you can't rent. It doesn't make economic sense unless there's a reason why you're trying to do that. Dormers and cupolas are things that you see on Morton buildings, on nice farms, but you don't see them on storage units. So what we were essentially told was that as long as you can blend into the look, and so if you drive up Treybine Road, there's what's called the barn, or the center, or the clubhouse of Stonehill Village. And so that building essentially is a white barn with hunter green roof. It doesn't have the garnet trim, but it has cupolas. It has one cupola and has dormers, and so faux dormers. So that's the look. So what we're doing here is we're essentially saying that, and if you flip back, I apologize for the back and forth. If you go back to the site plan, if you can leave that picture's fine, go back to site plan. So where our office building is located, which is building B on this site plan, flip back to the picture, Mr. Rushing, I'm sorry. This is the style of building that we're proposing what our office will look like. So, and I know we're here to talk about a site plan, but I know it's sensitive as far as the look and feel and how it blends to the community. So we have a freestanding office, which costs more to build than it would be if we attached it to a building or built it into a building. But we want to fulfill the commitment that we made to the Nutters. So a white building, green roofs, a cupola, some dormers, and some garnet trim would be the office. If you go back to the site plan, and I'll show the perimeter buildings. So I don't know if you can see it, but it's kind of in the shape of a U, and maybe go down one drawing. So on this one you can see, so if you zoom in just a tad, and I apologize. Yep. And so building, my vision is horrible, sorry. So the buildings on the perimeter that go essentially across the north, they run horizontal, and then you'll see two buildings that go vertical along Treybine, and then scroll down just a tad, and you'll see the one building along Dayton Xenia. So those buildings are what we refer to as our perimeter buildings. If you flip back to the color rendering, Mr. Rushing, you go down one. This is the look of what we envision on the outside of our perimeter buildings. And so what we've actually done is we've worked with an architect, we've worked with our civil engineer, with our architect, and with a design build company, that what we will do is we'll actually replicate the look of this horse barn on the outside of those buildings. So when you drive down Treybine, or you drive down Dayton Xenia, or even as you turn into Overbrook, those buildings that you see, there'll be no functional doors on the back side, the side facing the street. What we do actually is we take a door, essentially, that we fabricate what's like a barn door, a sliding barn door, and we essentially mount it to the building. And then with some paint and some other treatments, we're able to create that look so that when you're driving by at 40 miles an hour or 50 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour, what it'll look like to you is horse stalls. There won't be any horses hanging out of them, but they'll look like horse stalls. And so that'll be around that entire perimeter. Mr. Rushing, if you flip to the site plan again. Buildings on the interior. So those buildings on the exterior, we're planning for a 412 pitch. That's what we're planning for there. We'll have a little bit lower pitch on the interior buildings, but still same color scheme. White building, green roof, still doing garnet trim. So these are tri-colored buildings. This is not your normal storage facility. Typical is going to be one or two colors, and you paint the doors so that they see them. In this case, we're hiding the doors. We're putting them on the back side of the building. So that large rectangular building D, I believe it is a climate controlled building. And so we've done our traffic analysis as far as all of the traffic coming into and out of Overbrook has been studied, and there's nothing that, from an impact standpoint, you look at trip counts. And so on a storage facility, the one we had 407 units. So this is anticipated to have more than that. We have not finalized essentially our unit configuration yet. A lot of that you finalize as you get closer to construction because you're monitoring competition. But from a trip count standpoint, when we opened that facility on Orchard Lane, it was interesting because we thought, oh my God, all the storage facilities are open from 6 to 6 and got to be open on Saturday and Sunday. And Kim and I actually worked it ourselves for the first 6 months that we were open, and we realized this is crazy. Nobody comes here. We're sitting here all day waiting for one person to come in the door during the week. And on Saturdays, you get maybe 3 or 4, unless it's the first of the month or the end of the first of the month or the last day of the month when you get a move out, or two. And so seasonally, the business is interesting. So it's a May and it's an October. So people are moving in or out, following the housing shift and then following the college shift. But in general, you're looking at, so on a facility of this size compared to a facility of what we sold, a typical day, you're going to see maybe 3 customers come in the door to the office. As far as customers circulating through the site, it's very interesting because the dynamic and the studies, the National Association, the Self-Storage Association, they put out these studies as far as trip counts. And a site like this would require one person 28 hours a week. So that's it. As far as from a maintenance standpoint and from a management standpoint, because essentially you just don't have that traffic count. So the way this facility is designed is we've got an office. We've doubled the number of ADA parking spaces. We've doubled the number of ADA storage units that are required by the ADA. So I've got a 91-year-old dad. Kim's parents are in their 70s. And so we recognize that, and that's what we chose to do. So it's added cost, but it's worth it. We've increased the aisles. So from a convenience standpoint, I joke, but it's true that every U-Haul driver is an amateur U-Haul driver. Every single one of them. So industry standard is 25-foot aisles. If you look at our first facility that we built, our phase 1 was 25-foot aisles, our phase 2 was 27-foot wide aisles, and our phase 3 was 30-foot wide aisles. And so this is all 30 or more, and there's a reason for that, and it's to give creature comfort. So if you're moving a truck in or out, there will be no truck rental. There will be no trailer rental at this facility. It's not permitted by essentially Stonehill Village, even if it were permitted in the conditional use, essentially stipulated no outdoor storage. So there'd be no uncovered or outdoor parking or storage, anything like that. It's just not permitted. No truck and trailer rental. Like I said, double the ADA spaces, double the ADA units, 30-foot wide minimum aisles. On the ends, we did 35. We circulated a ladder truck. That's what you see in this drawing to make sure we can get in and out of the site. We actually added a second gate because to essentially improve ingress egress, but also as an accommodation for a future phase 2. This is phase 1 of what should be, there should be another phase 2 coming. So stormwater, we ended up having to do a 1.75 acre stormwater detention area there. So significant, but it's also planning essentially, and it's doing it right. So from a security and a standpoint, the buildings themselves in that kind of almost a perfect U around the perimeter, the buildings act as a perimeter fence because the building itself is there. In between those buildings where the gaps are, we actually have decorative gates. So if you can imagine, and I think there's gates in some of those pictures, but we have decorative gates between the buildings that open dominantly for snow. So they kind of double as a snow place for accumulation. I'm trying to think of anything else that is there. So otherwise, it's a modern facility. Like I said, from an access control standpoint, also from a security standpoint, cameras, surveillance, solar lights is what we're trying to do on the buildings, if feasible. If we can get enough light, we'll lighting essentially. The way we designed the first one and the way we're designing this one is 0-foot candle at the property line. So there's no light cast. And in fact, if you look at this compared to a neighborhood, the number of lights on an aisle, you actually stagger them. So they end up about 80 feet apart. So on a 240-foot long building, there's only about 3 lights on that aisle. And they're down lighting, they cast. So it, like I said, we've done this before. So that's the concept, that's the design, and answer any questions you have. So.
Okay, I have some questions. On building A,
Yep.
what would be the facade there then?
The same. So that would be essentially, if you think of again, that's going to be a 312. That one is either a 312 or a 412 pitch. So all the buildings, if you go back to the rendering, so this is the perimeter buildings. Scroll down
Right.
one, Mr. Rushing. So this is what it will look like from a distance as far as when you're driving down the road, you're going to see green roofs, red cupolas, dormers, white fence. Scroll down if you can. And so this is what interior buildings would look like. So the ones that are inside the site. And essentially if you go back to the very first one here, so similar to this would be the best representation, a little bit taller of a building for that building A, but the same essentially 412 pitch, dormers and cupola.
And A and D will be climate controlled or just D?
D is climate controlled, A is not climate controlled. So
Okay.
A is, think of it as a property management, property maintenance building.
Oh, okay.
So you have to have a place to keep a snow plow and a truck, and we can't park anything outside, so we have to be able to park whatever we
Okay,
need
so
on the
this
inside.
is-
So that's a building specifically just for the manager's use.
And then on your stormwater, 1.7 acres,
Yep.
is that a dry?
It's intended to be dry. We do not want it to be wet.
Okay, so
Right, no fountains or anything like
that's what
that. No,
I was gonna say, let's
no.
put a condition
No
on
one
the
would want that to be
fountains.
wet. Right.
Okay. I didn't have any other questions. I think it,
Yeah, like I said, where the buildings are not, where we don't have a gate between buildings. So if you see building A and then you kind of follow the squiggly line all the way down around the pond there. So there is white fencing and there is black fencing that goes in there. So the black fencing is where you're trying to avoid creating a visual, and the white fencing is where you're doing accents. So we've actually already done a landscape plan for this site and submitted it, and that's been approved as well. So we had a landscape architect out of Chicago that did it for us. And so it has stone monuments, it has landscaping. At the entrance to this facility, it's the same signature stone columns you see all along Trebein with the lanterns on top. So it's an aesthetically pleasing facility. There will be another 60-foot flagpole here. So our son is Air Force captain and we will fly that flag.
On your egress on gate 1 and gate 2, is it a one-way in, one-way out, or it'll be a dual?
No, so on the way in, there's a keypad essentially that you can get into the site with, and on the way out, there'll be a loop system in place that you essentially pull up on, and certain weight essentially will open that. There's also ADA compatible, what they call service gates, essentially, so that in the event that you were in the site and your car battery died and you couldn't get out, you could walk out those gates at both gate points. So you kind of see them a little bit there, but there's actually in between the gate, the controller, and the building that the gate controller is up against, there's a service gate there, and it's ADA. So they're, from an exit standpoint, they're push. They're not locked. From the exterior coming in, they're locked. So that apron essentially that's coming in, like I said, out there is where the stone columns would be on either side of the entrance. And then there's actually white fence leading from the road into the site. And then on the north side in front of the office, the white fence goes from Overbrook all the way over to Building E.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
I think you did a wonderful job answering, a lot of the questions that I think were going to be asked. The aesthetics, the amount of traffic flow, and those types of things. A lot of those questions are you detailed.
I will comment. We live here, so we live in Stonehill Village, so we drive by this corner every day. So as comparatively to other uses that it is zoned for, we consider this, and others have considered it to be a very light impact. So there are no toilets, there are no bathrooms, there are no people. We have one restroom essentially in the office, but it's not it could have been 100 homes. So.
Or it could have been a huge business.
Could have been a green, correct.
Yeah, people were going in and out and tying up that entire corner the whole time, so. And I don't think I don't know if many businesses that would invest the kind of money and put a horse farm kind of look to that on that corner.
Appreciate that. Anything else?
Thank you. Okay. We will open up the public portion of the hearing. So if anybody would like to come up and speak, you will have 3 minutes. Just like we stated before, just come up to the podium and give us your name and your address.
My name is Eddie Keeler. I'm 1647 Stonebury Court in Claiborne Green. Mr. Kretz, thank you for your explanation. A lot of the questions I had were answered by your presentation. Thank you. Thank you for your time as well. So we're just a small portion of those who are really opposed to the storage units. We talked about the traffic pattern, but another thing we noticed is there's several other storage unit opportunities around the area. There's 3 within 1 mile, 5 within 5, and 18 within 10. Our biggest concern to the whole community is the decrease in property values. We just see I've read a lot of articles about other neighborhoods that have had storage units open there, and it just does not help their property values. And Mr. Kretz also talked about, I wasn't here when this happened, but apparently there was this other plan of retail and something nice, and then that kind of just fell apart. And I understand that there wasn't quite much room, but maybe there are other ideas could have been proposed. I don't know. The other thing I noticed is there was a previous application years ago by another company to build a storage unit, and that was opposed by Netter Enterprises. Just kind of interesting fact. And that's kind of all I had. Those are the points I just wanted to bring up. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for staying and hanging with us and giving us your opinion. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Go ahead. Again, name and address, please. Thank you.
Sure. Christy Thompson, 1187 Lancashire, also in Claiborne Green. I just want to reiterate, Eddie said we are a small contingent. We are a small contingent of a lot of people who are very opposed to this. A lot of the neighbors in Claiborne Green We've talked about it often on Facebook that this is not the community that we were sold when we built our homes. We weren't sold that we were going to have 19 acres of storage units south of our homes. We were sold that we were going to have, neighborhood coffee shops or brew pubs or places where we could go and gather together as neighbors and families and have community, not storage units that I don't care what they look like on the outside. The concept, you're still going to see that they're storage units from the road. I think they would look nice, but we don't live in Kentucky either. I can't express how concerned we are as neighbors that this is the concept that is now just coming forward for those of us that have lived there for a decade or more. I'm not happy. Our families aren't happy. I think it's important that it be expressed to the trustees. So I appreciate your thoughtfulness in approving or disproving this plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Lucas Abramson, 1117 Westover Road, also on Claiborne Green. So kind of to piggyback on Eddie and her words. So I'm also opposed to this. So I have kids and have lived here a couple years, and I love living in the area, living in the township, and also the design itself I don't have anything wrong with. It's just the location. So as she mentioned, the fact that this is, I guess, the best that could fit there. I don't see that as being true. As my kids grow up, I'd rather them have a park to play in or green space or more bike trails to access instead of, a place, a storage unit to look at every time I drive by, or for teenagers to go hang out at and get into trouble and whatnot. I guess I'm just up here to express my frustration, as a member of the neighborhood and public. So that's about all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up. Name and address, please. Yep. Take your time.
Back surgery will do that to you. Bob Baldwin, 1644 Stonebury Court in Claiborne Greens, and I just have a couple of comments. My understanding is there was a storage facility that was proposed over by Killcare, and the powers that be said, no, we're not going to do that here. And now we're looking at a potential storage facility that's pretty much within eyesight of where my family and others are going to be living. I think Eddie and Christie's comments are echoed by me as well. I'm not going to reiterate what they said. But my question is, if you lived in Claiborne Greens, okay, would you want something like this next to you, okay? And I also challenge you, wherever you live, would you like to have a storage facility within 500,000, whatever the distance is, for here? Would you like that near you? And if the answer is yes, fine, good, glad for you. But I'd challenge you that you would probably say no. So what's good for us, what's good for you, treat each other the same. And understand that we're the ones that are closest to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex, was it Killcare and Xenia? What's us?
Good evening. My name is Jeff France. I'm at 1040 Lancashire Drive, also in Claiborne Greens. Thank you for allowing us to come and provide our presence here tonight. I'm also in opposition of the storage units for many of the reasons that my neighbors have spoke on. My home is less than 1,000 yards from this facility. So I have concerns about the aesthetics. I know very thorough presentation, and it is an upgraded form of what a storage unit is, but most storage units are near soccer fields or gas stations and commercial developments or Eleno or drive-through facilities. This close to a residential planned community provides a lot of opportunity for potential crime and just the devaluation of the aesthetic of the property that we thought we were moving into. As well, the serious concerns about the devaluation of our properties. So just wanted to express my opposition and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Robert Riddle, 1581 Amberley Court, Claiborne Green. I'm also opposed to this storage facility. I hear there's a keypad access, which means probably 24-hour access to this, which is completely, we don't want people visiting this facility all hours of the time. My neighbor, who is a teacher at the elementary school, says she's completely appalled that they would consider putting a storage unit this close to an elementary school. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Tyler Cronenberry, 1614 Stoneberry Court. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Kretz. I just want to make a comment that at one point I was on the board for Stonehill Village, and the developer, Better Enterprises, specifically stated at the time that what they wanted for commercial use was to be more unique offerings, less big box, and I'm a little bit disappointed to hear that we're actually getting big boxes in this area now. So that that's a little bit disappointing. Understanding the fact that we're seeing that what was originally intended may not come to pass. It's just kind of disappointing. I just want to express my opposition. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jennifer Creel, 1523 Stonebury Court. I also live in Claiborne Greens. I'm with these individuals, and while the storage units do look nice, I agree they are nice-looking storage units. I do have a concern just being so close in proximity to homes and the school from a safety standpoint. Sometimes you get the perception or you see that storage facilities might attract more people or more types of crime, and so that is just a concern for me having young kids. And the fact that the storage facility, the streets that you could actually connect, they eventually might connect, so the accessibility to the neighborhood in that close proximity is also a concern. Along with what Tyler was saying, when I moved in, I was doing research about what I might be looking at, even though I do have a buffer of green space between my house and the residential and high residential and commercial zoning area. But I was told there was going to be something more that would be a beneficial aspect to the community. And so just hearing that it's a storage unit is just something that was a little concerning. So I just wanted to express my concern. So thank you.
Thank you.
I was not planning on speaking, but I do feel like I need to express my opposition. I'm Stacy Kerr, 1589 Derby Drive, also in Claiborne Greens with all these good neighbors. While I do appreciate your presentation, and you did really answer a lot of our questions, and the buildings are beautiful, and we appreciate, your willingness to make it a beautiful place, rather than the typical storage unit. I do have my concerns. I don't feel like I can voice anything different than what has already been voiced in terms of safety and the type of facility it is. But I do need to express that we are opposed, me and my family, my 6 children. We live there, and with the potential for it to be connected to our neighborhood, that is a major concern for me and my children. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
You can continue the public hearing, or you can close it, and then you can ask directly to Mr. Kress to respond.
Okay. We'll go ahead and close the public portion that everyone that's wanted to speak has had a chance, and I'll allow you your comments, Mr. Kretz.
So a couple things that we heard. So number one, as far as, if we can, and I hate to have you do this again, but if you can pull up GIS or flip over to that and zoom out. And then if you can click on the parcel north of Overbrook, the 38 acres. Okay. So to clarify and just make sure everyone is on the same page, there will be 38 acres of townhouse style condominiums in between the self-storage site and Claiborne Green. It would be unlikely from the second floor of any home that backs up to that property that's highlighted right now that you would even be able to see the storage facility from a second floor bedroom. It just from an elevation standpoint, there, like I said, there would be roughly 250 to 260, whatever it is, townhouse style condominiums that are in that section right there. So I just want to make it clear that this site, the storage facility, is as far removed in Stonehill Village as it could possibly be from Claiborne Green. The second comment that or concern that was expressed was access, and that's something that I had mentioned in the zoning commission, but I did not reiterate today. So this is not a 24-hour access facility. So it is a limited access facility, meaning that access essentially in the summertime, if you think about summer, it's light outside till 9 or 9:30. In the wintertime, it gets dark at 5:30. So the cutoff time that we're anticipating is 10 p.m. It will not be a 24-hour facility. That's not common in these types of markets. Most of the ones around us have essentially, Phillips has reduced their access, Public Storage reduced their access, Frontier Self-Storage reduced their access in Fairborn. And so, but that's the standard. The standard now is not 24-hour. As far as proximity to the school, that one actually caught me by surprise a little bit, only because what was proposed and what was approved here was restaurants with liquor permits, brew pubs, restaurants with patios, and retail. All of those require dumpsters. Most of them require liquor permits. Most of them have employees, traffic coming in and out. And a storage facility, like I said, it'll have 1 to 2 employees at a time at most. And those are only 2 employees really only during peak season. From a crime standpoint, I would challenge anyone to look at the record of American Pride Self-Storage that was at 580 Orchard Lane. The Sheriff Department and Beaver Creek Police Department both had full access to the facility, and they will in this case as well. So law enforcement, essentially, we have a high respect for law enforcement, number one, but number two is we want them to have full access to our facilities, so they'll have codes where they can essentially, number one, be in this area. They're in this region a lot because of the school anyway. We had 0 break-ins at our facility. The Cadillac dealership had crime, and the gas station, the Circle K gas station had crime. We had 0 break-ins from 2011 to 2017 when we sold it. I don't know if they've had any since, but we had none. As far as from a property value standpoint, if I look at the property values of Claiborne Green, and I look at all of the development that's happening around it, and a national shortage of housing that's happening, I don't foresee this development essentially diminishing value of any homes in Claiborne Green or anywhere else in Stonehill Village. And that's, I'm a professional in that industry, and I understand pricing and I understand how that works. So that's my opinion. So, thank you. Do you have any other questions for me?
No.
Thank you. I've just hearing from your comments and things like that. I know you're all opposed to the storage facility in general, but I want to reiterate and remind everyone that this is just a site plan approval. The plan for the storage facility has already been approved, as Mr. Amrine was speaking about that. Is that correct? I mean, we're just approving the site plan. So the approval for the conditional use has already been approved for.
The use is approved, the configuration of buildings and all the design details have not yet. That's why we're here tonight, as well as, this is not a construction plan approval.
Right.
That's done by the county,
Right.
Greene County, according to a public process. It's not public hearings, but they're meetings that are open to the public at which the actual construction drawings are produced by the developers and their engineers, and questions answered like, are you sure that pipe's big enough? That's when we get into the really hairy details of how are you going to keep this away from this? How are you going, that sort of thing. This is not, as I said, it's not construction drawing approvals, and construction drawings themselves are subjected to 2 cycles of approvals, preliminary and final, at the county level. At that county meeting will be the regional planners from the county, as well as the engineers, representatives of the utility companies, sanitary engineering, who are the others? What, fire department? Do we have a fire department? The fire department will be there. And so, comments and details in sometimes painful detail will be gone over in a series of meetings that will answer really fine point kinds of questions. So you're granting approval for the site plan tonight. If you do so, does not constitute permission to build.
Right.
That has yet to happen at a different level.
I just wanted to reiterate that. We're
Yeah.
not saying yes or no, this is going to be approved to build. We are just approving the site plan like that is.
This is approximately a middle step in the process. We've gone through preliminaries, and now the detailed engineering drawings come. And part of the rationale for that sequence of events is that is the cost and time associated with producing those kinds of drawings. You don't want to invest this kind of time, the kind of time and cost involved in this submittal that we're looking at tonight if there's no guarantee that you're allowed to build this facility as a type. And that's why the conditional use hearing came first. And thus it doesn't make sense to produce detailed engineering and construction drawings unless the rough organization of the site is already approved. And that's what we're here for now. This site is a challenging one. I mean, a lot of people think of Ohio as flat. Well, come look at this site, anything but. And so, given the river that flows right through our midst, we've got an awful lot of drainage issues to consider. And the current county engineer is especially committed to getting it right when it comes to drainage, and especially given the proximity of a national scenic river right across the street. She knows that trouble can follow very quickly if we don't watch if we don't pay attention to doing it right with regard to the national scene. It's a National Park Service facility. We don't want the National Park Service taking a look. So we'll mind our P's and Q's on that one.
Thank you.
I had just wanted to comment too on, public comments are done, I'm sorry.
I just had a clarification question on the process.
Your chair.
It's just a process question, like, just to be transparent.
Okay.
So is the purpose? Yes.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm new. So is the process of this meeting to decide on the what it is rather than how it's made? How it's made, like you mentioned, down the road you get into the details of how it's built and whatnot. So we're in the future or for other things, when's the decision made of what it is versus how it's made? So that was my question. Thanks.
Mr. Ameren?
The what goes here is, it involves a lot of different parties. When we revised the master plan to Stonehill Village, my advice to the township was to try not to get too specific in legislation about what you can put here or here or here. If only a school can be built here, then it automatically shuts off discussions of other uses. And that's exactly what happened with the school. When it was zoned commercial PUD, the zoning of the school, a condition was placed on that zoning that only a school could be built there. So if the school district had changed its mind and tried to sell that property, it would have been worthless to other uses. And so these kinds of negotiations go on all the time, and decision-making, the negotiations happen all the time. The decision-making is always done in public. And the revision of the site plan that talked about commercial coming down to this part of Stonehill Village, there were at least 4 public hearings associated with that revision, 2 before the zoning commission and 2 before the trustees. Neither body felt comfortable making a decision that big on the basis of a single meeting. And they wanted more input from the public, or they had specific questions. I guess from where I sit, it's sometimes frustrating that, and let me say, I'm delighted that you're here. I really am. And I'll make a plug right now. We need good, interested citizens involved in the zoning commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals. But notices went out for those meetings too. You know, everybody who owns property within 500 feet got the notices, and they were published in the Dayton Daily News. They were published on our website. They were online, and anybody who wants a notification of anything that's happening in public in this township simply needs to go to our website and sign up for it. You'll get all the notifications you want. I mean, the access is there. We can't force people to come earlier in the process than a development affects their backyards. We can't force that to happen. And that's one of the frustrations of this profession. And I'll get off that soapbox now. Come to a zoning commission meeting, come to a BZA meeting, see how they work, see if you're interested in that kind of process. And they're all citizen planners, no professionals, no planning professionals on those boards. They're nurses and truck drivers and doctors and so forth. The specific answer to your question has to do with changes in real estate market value. I mean, the owners of this property have been sitting on it for 30 years with approval to build Stonehill Village, and what do we have? Well, now they have an offer. What would you do? You know, So a lot of this is dictated by market forces. Market forces to date have dictated that all we're building in Beaver Creek Township to date are single-family homes. Well, when the market crash happened in 2008, it took us 5 years to recover from that because so many single-family dwellings were going underwater. Whereas townhomes and condos and other multifamily units elsewhere were doing fine, because that's what people could afford. It took us till 2014 to get back to the same number of housing permits that we had in 2008. And then we took off like gangbusters. We're building 100 homes a year, including yours. But there's a downside to having a single type of construction going on in your jurisdiction. The variety is what attracts development. And one final point, commercial development contributes commensurately more to the township coffers than residential development does over the long haul. In the short term, sure, we'll collect more in property taxes, but over the long haul, first time we have to repave your streets, Claiborne Greens becomes a loss leader. And so it's in the township's best interest to allow and to pursue stuff like this that'll support the kind of lifestyle and construction and homes that you've become accustomed to in Claiborne Greens and elsewhere in Stonehill Village. I mean, you don't have to agree with me. I've chosen to live out in the country. I don't.
Okay, I gotta go potty.
But where I see this from a planner's perspective is what I just said.
Thank
you.
Sorry
Thanks,
that was
Ed.
so long.
No, thank you.
I wanted to address some, I wrote down some of your comments and again, you have to realize that, this has been in the works for decades and things change as you see. Every day things are changing in our environment, our living situation, our technology. And, it would have been nice to have a mini green, but if nobody wants to build it, it doesn't happen. When I was on the Beaver Creek City Council and in zoning and planning, people were upset when the horse farm on Research was sold and the houses were going to be put in. And I told the residents then, all the residents should have got together and bought the land and they could have kept a park right in between their homes. You can control that. But when a property owner decides to sell, you can't bring, it's the same as if you wanted to have your home and you want to sell it. You would be upset if somebody stopped you from selling your home. And the same thing with this property. I think that many businesses looked at it and saw how expensive it was to build, what the land use was like. It was too difficult. As far as the storage facility, one of you said, I lived off a Yellow Brick Road. There was a storage facility right there at the end of it. I never had any problems with the storage facility that was there. Now I live behind a cemetery. I don't have any problems there either. But sometimes people come through there a lot, so I don't know. But the township does do a lot on parks and things. We put a lot of money towards our wetlands and preserving the rivers that we have here in our township. And we've spent money to the Beaver Creek Wetlands Association by giving them money for land to purchase, by helping to volunteer our staff, volunteers to buy the walkways, to help put the walkways in and establish and preserve the natural habitat that we have in the township, which a lot of communities, City of Beaver Creek and other communities around us don't do. We have at least preserved some of the real natural beauty that we have in our township. So we try to do the best we can with the property. You know, what you're gonna have to look at is across the street, even though there may be a storage facility on one side, across the street, there could be a gas station, there could be bars, there could be a dining facility. You don't know what's gonna happen there, and that's gonna be close to your homes too. But if it's zoned commercial, you know, we have a list of, and you can pull it from our staff, of what is allowed in a commercial development. And that's public knowledge. And so if you have a problem with what's in a commercial development, look what we allow and get involved in the zoning. That's the first step in the zoning process. Now that is already zoned commercial. So find out what is allowed in commercial zoning. What kind of businesses can be there? That's step one. But we try to do the best we can on these properties. We don't want to impact you with, you know, as far as the storage facility. The one question I had, the first thing when we started talking, I said Kentucky Horse Farm, and I had questions on my notes. When I saw the design, I have not seen the design till tonight. The design it really is beautiful, I have to say. I mean, yeah, we're not in Kentucky, but Stonehill Village has that concept with the white fences all around it and the barn. It has had that illusion, and I've never seen a storage facility that would look as beautiful as those buildings look. So my heart goes out to you as far as your homes and stuff, but I don't really think it's going to dissuade people from repurchasing your home. I don't think it's going to involve your kids having a deterrent there with the gates and the lockdown that it has. So, but we listen to you, and you know, we try to do the best we can for everybody concerned. That's my only comments. But thank you for attending, and we hope that you can attend more meetings. Anything else?
Nope, I think that was everything.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion for resolution number 202-40108-ZCB to approve specific site plan located within the subdivision plat Bluegrass Crossings at Stonehill Village, lot numbers 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, as recorded.
Second with discussion, do we need to add the approval that Ed wanted in there that is subject to any and other entities?
That is included
is that
in the
included
resolution.
in there? Okay.
Any other discussion?
No.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Thank you, board. That will conclude the public hearing portion. We'll take a brief 5-minute recess. As you note on the agenda, we do have a brief executive session. So we'll take a 5-minute recess and then go into executive session.
Thank you for
come out
calling.
to conclude our meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board, we just need a motion to go into executive session as printed on your agenda at 7:34 p.m.
So moved.
Read the motion, please,
I don't have it.
in front of you. Just got to read the section
here.
code.
Make a motion to go into executive session under Ohio Revised Code, section 121.22G1, to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official.
Second.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
I was waiting for the yellow. I see it in yellow.
Thank you, board. It is 8:01. I just need a motion to come out of regular session and reconvene the regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.
Thank you, board. I have no other business. Let's recommend a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Dean?
Yes.